All right. Hello to all my free minded friends out there. Hope everybody is doing well on this Monday. And it is the daylight savings time of year, so to speak. I hope everybody is adjusting well. Come on in, join the conversation. I'm going to just make sure all our equipment is in order. I appreciate everyone joining us this evening. We definitely have a lot to talk about. I'm curious if y'all have problems with that daylight savings the way I do. Sometimes I think it's a good thing, sometimes I think it's not such a good thing. I want to say hello to American Nana. I think everybody can hear me pretty well. Welcome to all our friends on YouTube. On X, they're starting to trickle in. Looks like Facebook is proceeding nicely. And Twitch. All right, I think we're coming along nicely. Yeah, hi Megan, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I've had a busy weekend. I've had a few of you text me and ask where was I this weekend. I apologize for the delay, but I try to get online when I can get online, but I had a lot of travel plans this weekend, so we were busy shuffling around. Went over to Orlando to spend time with my girlfriend's family, and you know how that is. Sometimes that's a joy, sometimes not as much, but I enjoy time I spend with her, and her family's really nice, especially if they're watching. I loved my visit over there. Zach, thanks for joining us. I like more daylight. Yeah, as I've gotten older, the reality is when it's light outside, I wake up. I try to buy those curtains that are what they call that daylight blocking type. There's a name for it they have, but generally keeps all the light out because once I see light, I wake up, which is fine. I get up and get my stuff done. All right. And of course, American Nana from West Virginia. Folks, we have got a lot to go over today, so we're going to jump right into it. And listen, I want to apologize again. I know that occasionally I have a few issues with the software on the StreamYard. I love StreamYard, I love their software. Occasionally there is a glitch, occasionally I mess up. It's just the way it rolls. I have to make sure that I am on a browser that supports it's got to be the Chrome browser, as I've mentioned to y'all before. I think there's a couple other browsers that the software will allow for you to have a conversation and for the sound to transfer correctly. However, sometimes it doesn't seem like it wants to work, but I think I got the glitches worked out and I've got a system set up where hopefully right away I will know if there is a problem. So again, I apologize when that happens. I try not to have any of those issues. So we'll see how that works out. Let's take a look and see what we got going on today because folks, we do have a lot. That State of the Union address was interesting. A couple of quick points I want to say about that. I have to tell you, and I don't know if you are going to agree or disagree, please put in the comments. I love to hear from you and hear whatever your comments are. I have, as much as I hate to say this, Joe Biden had a good night the other night. I think he really hit it out of the park. The expectations were so low for this man. It was considered an A plus if he would just get through it without having to be hospitalized. I mean, that's just unfortunately the reality of the situation. And the fact that he was aggressive, he was mean. I mean, on one hand, you can spin it that it's a sign of being old. You're getting mad. You're getting angry easy to where you're not able to compose yourself. But I have to call it as I see it. I've always told all of y'all that on this particular channel, I am not going to just spin it just to fit a narrative. If I see something, I'm going to say something. And in this particular case, I hate to say it, but he did a great job. Unfortunately, I want to walk back a little bit on the great job, but I think he passed what he meant to do. Now, obviously, it was filled with lies and distortions and half truths, and it just humors me how he can sit there and talk about how he's for the American people and he represents all of us, not just Democrats. And then in the same breath, he'll turn right around and maybe not in the State of the Union, but in prior speeches, he's always hammering MAGA and the fact we're loons and we're out of touch, just like Hillary Clinton calling all of the MAGA people a basket of deplorables. She even went as far as to say that there needs to be some type of quote reprogramming. Remember that little sit down interview she gave? It wasn't really that long ago. This is exactly how these people think, and this is how they treat us. But the problem, Mr. President Biden, is that half of the American people are MAGA. aka Republicans. Now, you can split hairs as to whether or not you can be a Republican and therefore you are MAGA, but let's be straight about it. The terms are interchangeable. So he did have a good night. He passed the test that I personally think this is going to put to bed any of these so-called pushes for him to step aside and to have someone else take his place. Unfortunately for us, he seems to have enough strength and presence of mind right now to where he can stay on the ticket if he wants to stay on the ticket. And again, that's just my prediction. That's just the way I feel it. When you're in power, history has proven, history has shown us, it is so hard to walk away from power. When you're in a position like that, it's very, very difficult to let it go. That's one of the reasons, one of my favorite non-religious historical figures is George Washington, because he did something that nobody else in history has ever done. And that is, he was at the pinnacle of power. He was president of the United States for 2 terms. And if he wanted to, he could have actually made himself a de facto king at that particular time in history. He chose to walk away from it. And I just don't think he really gets enough credit for what he did, because he set the example. He set the mode. He set the precedent for how this should play out from his time forward. And I just think that's really amazing. I remember back even in college, that was one of the historical figures I love to talk about, and I think that's the number one point. I mean, do y'all agree with me? I just think it really is something that's probably not talked about enough. But thank God for George Washington. So we'll let it go at that. Back on President Joe Biden, I can tell you from firsthand knowledge, there are a lot of medications you can pump somebody up on to help them out, to give them a good night, so to speak, to restore their faculties in their brain. I know for a fact, as I've gotten older, and I don't consider myself an old man by any stretch, but I would also be remiss if I didn't tell you straight up that probably the way I function today is not exactly the way I used to function back in my 20s as far as memory and stuff goes. But there are many medications, they're called nootropics. And I'm not selling nootropics. I'm not pushing anything on anybody. I'm just telling you a point. There are products like Provigil. I think the generic name is Monvigil or something. I'm not a doctor, so I can't really split the hairs on that. But you can take these nootropics, something like what I just mentioned, which was Provigil. I heard about that years ago. That is a very good medication. You have to have a prescription to get it. I think you can get it online, to be perfectly honest with you. For me, I take it occasionally, and it works fantastic. Matter of fact, sometimes I take it daily in the morning. It just seems to help wake you up. It is a medication that was originally designed for people with narcolepsy to keep them from falling asleep. But they found out that it has a lot of effects on your brain as far as helping you stay awake and focus. I don't want to say it's like Ritalin, because Ritalin can give you that stimulant effect, like where your heart's pounding out of your chest, this type of thing. With Provigil, I don't have those type of issues. It's difficult to explain to someone that's never tried it. It is because when we take medicine, we think, oh, you're going to relieve pain. You're going to have like a euphoric effect that you would have maybe with a narcotic or some kind of pain medication. That's not the case with Provigil. It simply just wakes you up. I can't really describe it any better than that. It wakes you up, but it does more than wake you up. It really helps you focus sharper, and it really has a positive effect on my life. It's not as dramatic as some of the folks you might see on YouTube that are talking about it, at least in my situation, but it definitely helps. No doubt about it. I'm blessed. I'm a pretty decent, healthy guy, but like a lot of people, I suffer with little arthritis and inflammation and issues like that sometimes cause me issues. And when you have inflammation and whatnot, it can make you feel, among other things, you can feel tired, you can feel slow. And I take it to help with that. And I think it does help, as far as brain fog and whatever. So how does this relate to the president? Well, I just told you, I think they had him jacked up on a bunch of meds. Just my humble opinion. I think that he probably had some kind of cocktail. I don't think it was any one medication. It probably was several medications. Don't have any proof. It's just J.R. Duke's theory, and that's what I can go on with that, because the way he performed in the State of the Union was definitely not consistent with the way I have seen him performed, and you have seen him perform and news conferences and other things like that. I mean, normally he's not able to keep a thought together. He's all over the place, kind of like I am most of the time, but he's the president. I'm not. So all joking aside, he really has a lot of issues when it comes to not saying things that a president shouldn't say. For example, I don't think I'm allowed to ask that, or where should I stand? Where's the X? I'm going to get in trouble. These are generally not terms that you associate. Am I right? That you associate with President of the United States. Just saying. As a side note, I have a lot of information I'm in the process of compiling pertaining to Joe Biden and these specific areas. It's not something that I want to beat up on somebody about. I mean, we all get older if we live long enough, and we're likely to have problems. But obviously, the fact it's not age, it's performance, folks. Everybody talks about age. It's not age. I don't care. I personally don't care if he's 95. I care about how's the man functioning upstairs. Is he able to negotiate deals? Is he able to allow world leaders to know that he means business? When he says something, you better respect what he says. And I just don't think he instills that type of respect we need. I can go on and on as far as a list of problems with him having this feeble old man attitude, but it is extremely concerning. And I'm sure you probably share my sentiments on that. So let's take a quick peek on what I have here for us. Here we go. This is just a few. There's been a lot of documents, I got to say straight up. Even though the judge is in the process of deciding all this, there are a lot of documents flying back and forth in recent days pertaining to this Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, aka love affair, RICO case, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to touch base on a few of these. We have this one document here pertaining to David Schafer and what his proposed testimony is. We're going to briefly talk about that, but I want to get into the second affidavit. I should say it's basically a proffer, and I'm certain we're going to have enough time for this one document here pertaining to the state's response. They're basically going back and forth with notes to the court, if you will. They're basically motions to the court saying that I support this or I don't support that, and that's essentially what's going on here. A couple other things too. I think I can slide this way. Yep, I can. First thing out of the chute right here. There is a potential other case involving Donald Trump that I think's about to fall. And I want to make sure you understand this. You know, we have this situation going on right now with this RICO case, Fani Willis, Nathan Wade. We've been talking about it because it's so interesting. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and it's going to continue to keep on giving. But it's not the only case that is pending. And I think what's going on is that the Democrats under Joe Biden and or the people that's controlling him have this big orchestration of all these cases that they have brought against Donald Trump. I think it's all organized. I do not think this is just all random events. Well, there's another potential case in Arizona that Donald Trump and his associates might be indicted for because they know the Fani Willis case is going down quickly. It's on fire. It's burning up. The only thing that has not happened in the Fani Willis case is the funeral. Yes, this case is dead. I've said it's dead for a long time. I don't care if the judge removes her or not, as far as my opinion. This case is dead. Just we need to have the respect to have the funeral for it. That's the only point I'm trying to make. And the Democrats know this. Their game is to try to throw as much mud at Donald Trump as they can and see what sticks. It's just that simple. If you keep a man in court and tie him up where he cannot go out and campaign, you can potentially win the election because of that. And that's exactly what their strategy is. As much negative news as possible. Keep them tied up in court as much as possible. The term we use to describe this is lawfare. I'm sure you've heard that term. That's exactly what it is, lawfare. The Biden administration, with their goons, have effectively weaponized the government as far as law is concerned. And I'm talking on state and federal type of laws. You obviously have the federal stuff all over the place with the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, and the document case and the other issues that he has indicted Donald Trump for. You have the Bragg up in New York City. You got just a local solicitor, a local whatever his title is. He went ahead and indicted one of the most powerful men in the world, at least a man that probably will have that position again. And he indicted him on a check he wrote to a porn star from back in 2016. Can you believe that? He's already served his first term as president, but that's what he's made literally a criminal case out of, is a check he wrote to a porn star. It almost doesn't sound real. And you would think, well, it doesn't really matter. His attorneys can handle all this. Well, there's a difference. When it's civil, he doesn't have to be in court. When it's a criminal case, he's required as a criminal defendant to be there for his case. So if he's there during the day for his case, and remember, former President Donald Trump is a 77, 78-year-old man somewhere in there. He has to be there all the time that they're having this trial. And from what I heard from published reports, he wants to essentially leave his trial after it's over during the day and go elsewhere to campaign. Folks, that is difficult on any person at any age. Can you imagine a 77, 78-year-old man with that type of schedule, where you're having to have this aggravating court drama all day long, and then boom, you're trying to run for president. You are running for president and keep up that hectic schedule. I mean, it would be very difficult for any of us to keep that up, but that's their goal. That's their goal. Keep him tied up, keep him embarrassed. They keep talking about these so-called surveys or these polls that they've taken that says if Donald Trump is convicted of any type of felonious crime, then his poll numbers would show him losing to Joe Biden. I don't know if I believe those poll numbers. I'm not sure how recent those poll numbers are, because, folks, any thinking human being knows what's going on here, and that is there is not a prosecution, a persecution of former President Donald Trump. They cannot beat him at the polls in their mind. At a minimum, they know that they have a good chance of losing. And right now, all the polls are showing that Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden, especially and specifically in the so-called battleground states. So they're very concerned about this, and they're doing everything they can to hammer Donald Trump, to get him, to keep him off the ballot, or at least keep him where he cannot campaign. They're not exactly sure what to do with him, short of assassinating him, but what they're going to do is everything else they can and hope something bad happens to the man. As sick as that sounds, that's exactly what their game plan is. Keep tying him up in court. It's like the one in New York, this Letitia James, just suck all his money, cause him as many business problems as you possibly can. This cannot be good for former President Donald Trump's businesses. If you have a business and you're looking to do some type of real estate transaction, I mean, on one hand, I can see that it's good to go ahead and conduct business with a Donald Trump company, especially if he wins the election. But what if he loses the election and you're doing business with him and the state and feds are hammering him and everybody associated with it? I mean, it's got to be very concerning, right? So that's my point. It is just a all-out assault on Donald Trump and their attempts to deny you and me the ability to vote for who we want to be in office. So just keep that in your mind about this situation in Arizona. That might be the next shoe to drop, if you will. So I hope I'm wrong about that. But Zach, you're exactly right. Lawfare is unfair. You guys are right on the money with this. It's unfair. It's corrupt. I have been saying also for some time that the U.S. Supreme Court, I am so hopeful they will. They got the first decision right with the 9-0 decision with this last case pertaining to the state of Colorado, keeping him off the ballot. I am confident, cautiously optimistic is probably the best way to say it, that they will, at the Supreme Court, say that President Trump is immune from prosecution. Now, I'm talking specifically for his acts while he was president of the United States, because all of these cases, and arguably some of the evidence coming into the so-called Stormy Daniels case in New York City, they are expected to allow in evidence from the time he was president of the United States and some loosely related material. So the point is a lot of this hinges on what the Supreme Court rules. They're supposed to hear this case, I think, April 25th or something like that. So it's extremely critical that extremely critical that the Supreme Court really hears all this evidence, and I hope they come back with some type of positive decision for Donald Trump. My personal opinion as to what's going to happen, and I'm one of the few people telling you this, but I also told you it would be a 9-0 or 8-1 decision on this last case before the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm just telling you what my opinion is. I'm going to go on record. I'm going to tell you it's either going to be a 5-4 or 6-3 decision in favor of Donald Trump. It might not be a 100% that you cannot be prosecuted for anything that happened while you were president. I think what they're going to do is kind of split hairs just a little bit. They'll say something to the effect of, any of your acts that were associated with you being or acting as president of the United States, boom, then you are protected. So that's how they're going to read that. Now, you might ask, is that good or bad for Donald Trump? Well, either way, it's good, whether it's a total blanket coverage of immunity for him, or rather it's basically a tailored, a split the baby decision, as King Solomon would say. If, in other words, a person's president of the United States and they carry out an act, and the Supreme Court's going to say, if that act by a reasonable person would say that this particular act is something that is normal and customary that a president would do as president of the United States, he is completely immune and cannot be prosecuted, persecuted, whatever word you want to use in there. Now, why would that be good for Donald Trump? Even the latter one that's weaker? Here is the reason it would be good. Because you've heard me say many times, a lot of times when it comes to the practice of law, whether it's a criminal case and or civil case, you really don't want an attorney at law. You want an attorney at stall. An attorney at stall. Because when you delay justice, you've heard the expression maybe justice delayed is justice denied. That is true. That's the way it works. And it's not like Donald Trump's getting away with anything. It's just the fact he's using everything that he's entitled to his advantage as far as protecting his interests. And in this case, it's a criminal situation. They're looking to put this man and the individuals associated with him in a cage for 20 plus years. So it's a very serious situation. I've had people text me, oh, this will never happen. Realistically, he'll never be in a cage. You don't know that. I don't know that. I never thought I would see what we got going on right now going on. You just don't know what these loons would do to him. They've already taken his mugshot, trying to embarrass him and humiliate him and cause him to lose a presidential election. Do you think they want that money shot with him behind bars with cell number whatever across his chest or MA number whatever? Sure they do. I have no doubt that they throw him in jail. Just my humble opinion, but what I want to leave this subject with is, if it's a split decision or it's narrowly tailored to say wasn't an act related to his duties, here's why this is good. All these other cases going on get appealed, because what they'll do is they'll go into whatever judge and say, hey, listen, please dismiss this because this was a decision. Let's take the Fani Willis case. Let's just pretend the judge does not rule and say that they should be removed. Well, Trump and his team are going to go to Judge Scott McAfee and they're going to say, Judge, we need you to throw all this out because this was an act that the President Donald Trump committed or acted on while he was president of the United States. And the judge, let's just carry the example further. And let's say the judge says, oh, no, this was not part of his normal and customary act as president of the United States. Therefore, I'm going to deny that request. Well, I can assure you right then and there, the defense is going to produce what's called a motion in limine, and they are simply going to ask the court for immediate leave to appeal. Okay, it's just a way that they call it an interlocutory appeal is exactly what they call it. So it's going to be one of these rare interlocutory appeals. It's kind of just a long word that basically means you're going to appeal while the trial is still going on, while the case is still going on. It is a rare thing because generally to have an appeal, you have to have everything completed at the trial court level, which essentially means you have to have a verdict and a finding, and then you can appeal. But with these special type of appeals that I just described, the interlocutory appeals, you can appeal directly to the Court of Appeals and ultimately, in President Donald Trump's case, directly to the Supreme Court. What does that do? It delays it further. See, that's why you see all these liberals going ape. You know what? They're just going nuts because they know that everything is going the way Donald Trump needs it to go in order for him to become president again. Once he is president again, he can simply order his Justice Department at the DOJ, Department of Justice, to simply drop these cases. He could fire Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. There's a number of things that he can do. The case will end. He could also pardon himself. I've had people say, oh, no, he can't do that. He's not above the law. Well, sure, he's not above the law, but he sure the heck is not below the law. In other words, if he can pardon you, why can't he pardon himself? That's the argument right there. So it might be something that is challenged in court, but the court has no ability to really challenge him on that. I think it's pretty solid ground as far as a presidential pardon for himself and definitely for his family is concerned. So if you delay it, he wins. It's really just that simple. So all these cases are running up against deadlines that are simply not in a favorable, it's not favorable for the prosecution. That's the best way to say it. And the fact that the Supreme Court even decided to hear this Jack Smith case speaks volumes for the likely outcome for President Donald Trump. And I only say that because if the Supreme Court wanted to rule quickly and then send Donald Trump back to the courthouse there in Georgia and let him get hammered, why did they wait 16 days before they told everybody, oh, yeah, we'll go ahead and hear it? And not only that, instead of saying, have your arguments ready next week, folks, so that we can get to the bottom of this and get this moving quickly. And as a matter of fact, that's what Jack Smith asked. He said, Judge, I need you to rule, or justices, I need you to rule on this quickly. And they said, nah, I don't think we're going to do that. So instead of ruling on it right away, they've set it for somewhere around, I think it's April 15th. So by no stretch does it look favorable for Jack Smith or let's just call it the prosecution as far as these timelines go. So anyway, I hope that makes perfect sense. This is really good news as far as I'm concerned for the president. And as far as Arizona, I don't know if they want to hammer this anymore, but we'll see. Let's listen quickly to this one video pertaining to this, because I don't want to leave this subject just hanging here. We're gonna pop right back into this. It's this particular guy is not necessarily what I would call. Let me go ahead and share with you. We're going to go into this guy here. This guy's name is Brian Taylor Cohen. I think it's fair to listen to his program once in a while because he is not exactly what I call Mr. Conservative. Here we go. He's not exactly what I call Mr. Conservative. However, he does make some interesting points pertaining to this potential case with former President Donald Trump. So let's go ahead and listen to it, and let's see how this plays out. Here we go.
Now for Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election in other jurisdictions, but we may be looking at a new round of indictments now. So can you explain what's happening in Arizona?
Yeah, so news just broke that Arizona has been issuing subpoenas investigating potential election crimes, fake electors among them, out in Arizona. Now, what we know is the Secretary of State back in November had given a statement about ongoing investigations into possible election crimes in connection with the 2020 election. And the Secretary of State at that time said that the investigation was robust, but it feels like maybe it has now moved into a new phase. This might be an acceleration. They might be moving in the direction of indictments. The reporting is that several grand jury subpoenas have been issued, and there has been some anonymous indications or reports that people are being questioned about not only Arizona state GOP officials and election officials, but also Mark Meadows. They're being questioned about John Eastman and Kenneth Chesbro, some of the architects of the fake elector scheme. And of course, they are indicted down in Georgia as part of a.
Yeah, so just a quick note, what he's saying is, and this is why it has certain people putting up their antennas, they're hammering the subpoenas. They're talking to a lot of people right now, and it's making folks say, hey, I think the state of Arizona might be willing to go ahead and indict Trump again.
RICO conspiracy, along with a total of 19 co-defendants, co-conspirators, including Donald Trump, for the election crimes that were committed down in Georgia. So these witnesses are being questioned about. Some of the people in the sort of upper echelons of Donald Trump's world and Donald Trump's orbit. The reporting is also that they're being questioned about Donald Trump himself. Now, it remains to be seen, one, if any indictments will be returned in Arizona, and two, if so, will they include federal actors? Will they include state actors? Might they include both, which is precisely what we saw down in Georgia? But it does look like things are brewing in Arizona.
Well, does there still remain the possibility that Donald Trump himself could be indicted in Arizona in the same way that he was included in the indictments in Georgia?
Yeah, Brian, it's actually been a surprise to me that we haven't seen other states other than Georgia try to indict Donald Trump, try to hold him accountable for interfering in those state elections. I mean, news accounts were.
Yeah, it's what you call states that are Democrat and have Democratic personnel sufficient, willing to take the risk, knowing that they're probably going to lose.
Replete with of Donald Trump reaching out, making phone calls, pressuring people, if not directly, through intermediaries. So it wouldn't at all surprise me if we saw, I guess if we had to count them up, this would be a fifth Donald Trump indictment.
Glenn, why did the Arizona case take so much longer? Like the other indictments that we have from the DOJ and from Fulton County, Georgia, for example, on the same topic of election interference in 2020, those were handed down, closer to last year.
I wish I could explain the inexplicable, Brian. Time is always of the essence when you're investigating crime generally, and when you're investigating election crimes, you would think you would want to try to, move forward in an investigation, move toward formal criminal charges if the evidence supports it in a pretty prompt manner. The last thing you want to do is let your state go through a number of election cycles before you start to hold wrongdoers accountable. I mean, one of the ways.
This guy's obviously one of these anti-Trump kooks, but they have some interesting points here. We're just going to listen for a few seconds more.
You deter election crimes are by promptly investigating, indicting, and prosecuting those who commit election crimes. And I don't think anybody can say that, here we are coming up to the 2024 presidential election and Arizona now just getting around to potentially making charging decisions. I don't think anybody can say that that's prompt, that that's timely, but, we are where we are.
Glenn, given that this is taking place in Arizona, would this be a state crime? And if so, would then, even if Donald Trump does win the 2024 election, because it's a state crime, is there nothing that he can do with regard to some type of self-pardon even?
Yeah, so this gets a little tricky.
Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is if Donald Trump is elected again as president of the United States, these cases are all going away. And it's so obvious. Isn't it so obvious what they're all trying to do? I mean, it just smacks of, as RICO, you want to talk about RICO? This is RICO, racketeering, internally corrupt organization. This is the Democrats, the libs, all trying to conspire to find a way to take out Donald Trump. Why didn't they file this years ago? Why did they file? Why are they filing it now? Why are they filing it specifically right now? Now that apparently the Fani Willis case is going down in flames. It's so obvious. Anybody and everybody knows that. Even your local Democratic friends know what's exactly going on. And to them, it's funny right now. They hate the guy. They hate Trump. So they think it's funny. Hey, we're just going to continue sticking it to him. It's funny right now. But the problem with that, fellow Democrats, is that today it's Donald Trump. At a later date, it's going to be some candidate you care about. And what you have to remember is it's not about Donald Trump. It's not about Joe Biden. It's even more than your right to vote or my right to vote. This is about our country. It's really about our country. I'm not trying to be dramatic for the sake of being dramatic. It's true. These type of cases, this type of nonsense undermines our entire country. I was just telling you what a great thing that President George Washington did, and all of our founding fathers have done, and all the sacrifices that they have made, hoping that this great experiment called the United States of America would pan out. This is the type of thing that could potentially destroy it. You're creating a constitutional crisis. You're creating a problem for the very country that has been so good to all of us, and it needs to stop. And that's why I'm so hopeful. I'm praying, literally, the Supreme Court of the United States puts a stop to this type of nonsense, because that is really the only thing that apparently is going to stop this type of stuff. So it is what it is. I hope that you're mindful about it, just and take it as serious as I'm taking it, because it is something. It's serious. There's not really a better way to put it. If you agree with me, put in the comments. Let me know if you see it as such a serious problem that I see it. I mean, I am concerned about it. That's one of the reasons I take time, make a video like this, make these type videos, and have a conversation with you, so we all know what's going on. All right, moving on to Sweet Fani. Charles, thanks for joining us today, by the way. I see you in the chat. It's always good to have you in the chat. So moving on to Sweet Fani. We all know that Fani Willis is in the hot seat, to put it bluntly. We are waiting on Judge Scott McAfee to make a decision. The scheduled time for his decision, as you may or may not know, because the days start blurring together and time is moving rather fast, as it always does, is this Friday. Now, he can rule at any time, and we do not know if he is going to go ahead and actually open up this case for more testimony that we're going to talk about in a minute. But Friday is the judge's self-imposed deadline. So let's take a quick peek at this here.
Well, there is a new twist in the Trump Georgia election case. District Attorney Fani Willis and Judge Scott McAfee are now drawing primary challengers in their bids for re-election. That means they both face the possibility of being pulled from the case before it heads to trial if they lose. Let's bring in our Fox News legal editor, Carrie Kupek-Urban. Carrie, great to see you this morning. So that's getting interesting.
Oh, this has always been interesting. But there are a couple of things to keep in mind, Sandra, as we wait for the judge's decision about disqualification. One, it is really unusual for a DA to be disqualified from a case by a judge. So that's a fact that everyone needs to remember. Two, there was a lot of discussion about the standard of proof, and that matters because, unfortunately, the Georgia law appears to be unclear here. Is it a preponderance of the evidence, meaning is it more likely than not that she acted inappropriately, or is it beyond a reasonable doubt?
That is one of the problems in this case that I want to make sure I mention ever so quickly. There is, surprisingly, the state of Georgia is one of the few states I could find that has any type of ambiguity about this matter, and that is the state law, the actual precedent. You know how we talked about the case laws interpret the actual laws? There are clearly two different standards on the book, and the judge could go either way he wants to go in this particular matter, because it doesn't really say if they have to meet a standard beyond a reasonable doubt, or what they call a preponderance of the evidence, or if it's just, in other words, is it more like football where you got to get to the 51-yard line, or do you have to have proof where you're getting up in the 90s? A criminal defendant, for example, is like a 97%. When they talk about beyond a reasonable doubt, that's generally what they're talking about. So the judge has a lot of discretion on which way he can rule, how he can apply the law. If it's just simply essentially a preponderance of the evidence, is it more likely than not that they've done something? Here's another standard. The judge can also apply what's called the appearance of something improper. And that's normally the standard I've always been familiar with when it comes to prosecution, when it comes to the cases in any particular state. And that is a prosecutor, folks, a prosecutor is held, rightly so, rightly so, they are held to a much higher standard of operation than you or me, or just a normal business, or just a normal attorney. Even regular attorneys, they have standards they have to meet. But a prosecutor has a very special position in the public trust. These are people that are responsible literally for deciding who's going to be put into a cage, who's not, whose life is going to be wrecked, who's going to be left financially destitute when this is done, and who is not. Just because there's a law, for example, that says a person can't do that, a prosecutor, a solicitor, a DA, they're supposed to use what's called prosecutorial discretion. That's what that is. That's what that's all about. They're supposed to put their thinking caps on and say, do we really want to hammer this person over this particular law, or is things okay the way they sit? Or should we charge them with a lesser crime? When a DA pulls out her toolbox and goes after people with the heaviest weapon she has, a RICO case, that is a serious, serious matter. And it is not something that should be done lightly or done to score political points or done to simply help advance her career. But unfortunately, and I don't use this word often, this woman on your screen in the middle, Fani, she's evil. Plain and simple. This is an evil woman, and she is doing evil things. If it was about justice, why didn't they bring it 3 or 4 years ago? If it is about justice and doing what's right for the country, why does she simply not step aside and allow another prosecutor or another DA's office to take over the case? And you know the reason, and I know the reason, because it's not about the United States of America. It's not about justice. It's all about getting Donald Trump
out, which is a very high standard. And, looking at that and hearing all the testimony that we've all watched unfold and all the drama on screen, I think if it's a more likely than not standard, I think the judge could probably squeeze through a disqualification. But if it's beyond a reasonable doubt, I think it gets a lot harder because it's a lot of he said, she said, and circumstantial evidence. And again, because it is so unusual and it's a very big deal to disqualify a DA, these are the things that a judge that he's thinking about as he makes his decision.
So let's rewind the tape and go back to a few of those moments. As you said, it's always been interesting. This was February 15th inside that courtroom. Fani Willis, listen.
You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
And then this was Fani Willis's former friend.
Unfortunately for her, she is on trial. She's the one in the hot seat. I thought that was really a telling thing where she's in there saying, "Oh, I'm not the one on trial," but she is the one on trial. She really thinks she rules that court. That's what's interesting to me. And quickly, the Lilo Show, what's up? Thanks for joining us today, my friend. I appreciate that. If y'all haven't checked out his channel, he's got himself a channel he's got set up, and you might be interested in that. So be sure to check him out. Thanks for joining us, Lilo. Appreciate it. Here we go, folks.
Testifying on that very same day. Listen.
Personal, romantic. I just want to make sure we don't get in an argument over what personal and romantic is later. When I ask you personal, do you take that?
Remember, this is Robin Yeager. This is that first witness that took the stand. This is the ex-best friend, the ex-college roommate of DA Fani Willis, who definitively said in 2019 she saw Fani Willis and Nathan Wade in an intimate relationship. And this is what attorney Ashley Merchant is pushing her on.
To mean romantic.
Yes.
And do you understand it that their relationship began in 2019 and continued until the last time you spoke with her?
Yes.
As you just said, Carrie, the bar is very high to disqualify a DA from a case. At this point, what do you think are the chances that will happen?
I don't know. I think it could go either way. I think that if you have a judge who is a more traditional judge and wants to adhere to standard practices, they're going to be resistant to disqualifying a DA, again, given the precedent value, the precedent that it would set. Also keep in mind that apparently, according to reports, some of the defendants have people that they'd like to bring forward who say that they will also testify that this relationship began long before they gave it to the court as far as what they said it when it started, which of course would be a problem because if they lied to the court, both in court and in filings, that would be, not only would it be a crime, which they would have to deal with separately, I think that would be almost automatic grounds for disqualification because it goes straight to their integrity. And then one more thing, Sandra, don't forget, there's that Georgia lawmaker investigation that's going on as well. And they say that they have people who want to come to them and testify under oath who say that she's lying about when the relationship began.
She's got a ton of problems, as you guys know, and I mean a ton of problems. One of the problems that DA Fani Willis has is she's facing a very high likelihood of some type of criminal issue because as this person was talking about right here, you have the Georgia Senate looking into this DA Fani Willis nonsense. Remember Ashley Merchant last week giving testimony in front of that Senate panel. In addition to all that, there's ethics complaints that are kind of up in the air. I'm not sure if they're actually going to move forward with those two ethics complaints, but you have the Georgia House of Representatives that has 22 charges against DA Fani Willis to actually have her impeached, aka removed from office, which is a high likelihood because the House and Senate are controlled by the Republican Party overwhelmingly. Additionally, you have the feds. You have the feds. You have I believe the Senate, maybe not as much as Senate, but definitely the House of Representatives under Jim Jordan has subpoenaed originally just Nathan Wade. Now he's going after Fani Willis, and he's investigating both of them for a whole range and a whole list of potential charges. So this is getting very serious. If I was the judge, what I would like to see him do is to stop this trial and appoint a special prosecutor. Yes, I said it, a special prosecutor. I really hate to make that recommendation, but in this case, it is really necessary because this is beyond perjury. And as a side note, there are 16, 17 of these individuals that are actually being persecuted/prosecuted for perjury in addition to their other charges, if not as a sole charge. So perjury that these people commit as part of this RICO action face 20 plus years in a cage, yet you got the prosecutor and the DA clearly lying to the court, committing perjury, and more than that, they are perpetrating a fraud on the court, and you cannot allow a fraud on the court to stand. That is so wrong in so many ways. It undermines the pinnings of our entire judicial system, our entire country. This is very important that we all get this right and understand this. You can't have someone like Willis and Nathan Wade going around and committing fraud on the court. So I want the judge to put the special prosecutor, just freeze the case temporarily. It's been around 4 years. It ain't going anywhere. Freeze it temporarily, appoint a special prosecutor, and he'll get to the bottom of this. Start bringing everybody in for depositions, make different requests for productions of documents, interrogatories, whatever they want to do. There is a list of things a special prosecutor can do to drill down on this case. A special prosecutor could definitely knock this out of the park, no problem, especially with all the cell data that they have. It is a shame that these people, such as Terrence Bradley and some of these other individuals, would actually lie for someone like Fani Willis and or Nathan Wade, especially when he apparently doesn't like either one of them, especially Nathan Wade as his ex-business partner. But, you know, sometimes people make bad decisions, and when they get themselves into a hole, unfortunately, they keep digging. Not a decision I would make, but obviously that's a decision that they've made. So
that's something that's still happening in the background. But, you know, the judge said that we can expect a decision from him over these weeks. And for the reports that I'm reading, it seems like it's going to come any day now.
Really?
That he decides not to reopen the case, because he could decide, I'm not sure what the odds of this are, but with these particular affidavits, he could simply decide to go ahead and reopen the case itself. We'll have to see if that happens or if that doesn't happen. I'm not willing to bet on it either way. I personally hope that what I just said, that he appoints a special prosecutor and kind of goes that way. I don't think that that's going to happen. As far as making a decision, he's going to make a decision. I'm hoping that he dismisses the cases. But as I have said, folks, many times, in a way, it really doesn't matter because this case is dead. It's tainted. Everybody knows it is. So let's take a peek at
James, who got the $450 million judgment against him and keeps tweeting out the running total of what he owes with interest. She's loving her moment in the spotlight, has learned the hard way that the working class, especially in New York, do not approve of her or what she's doing. Take a look at what happened to her when she addressed the FDNY. This is via Fox News. Watch.
Oh, come on. We're in a house of God.
I love that comment. Being in a house of God, it sure did not stop sweet Fani Willis from going to church on 2 different occasions and committing blaspheming. So I don't know why it would take a person like Letitia James, another evil person, by the way, that would bother or care about where she's at in church. It's just the irony is really dripping. Both of them in church and both of them lying, and both of them, they need Jesus. Trust me.
First, simmer down. I want to thank Commissioner Kavanaugh and Chief Hodgins for that recognition.
Wow. Sarah, look at that. FDNY, thumbs down. I'm sure they didn't respond nicely to being told to simmer down, which is annoying. They don't like her and they don't like what she's doing. They get it.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing many Americans, just like FDNY right there, just kind of galvanize around Donald Trump because they see what is so clear that
I wanted Joel mainly to see the beginning part of that. I thought that was just fantastic on the part of Letitia James. I love seeing all those firefighters. And, you talk about how messed up things are. They are actively, and I'll be talking about this in the next 2 or 3 days, they are actively seeking out the firefighters that were voicing Trump, and they are obviously going to try to take some kind of action against them. I can understand the reason why they want people to be professional, but in a place like New York, and the fact that everybody has their emotions kind of on a sleeve and everybody is just kind of wound up, and adding to the fact of what Letitia James has done and is doing to the state of New York, and how she's trying to interfere with our rights to vote for the president that we want to vote for. I can understand their frustration and the fact that they're extremely upset. I mean, I'm sure you can feel the same way that I feel about it. I want to get into this affidavit here, so let me switch over to this. I'm going to take a quick peek at this. I think I can just switch to my screen. So give me 1 second here. We're going to take a look at this because I think this is noteworthy, to say the least. Here we go. So this is one of the motions that have been filed, or I should say one of the court filings have been filed. I wanted to point out it says defendant Kathy Ladham's notice of proposed testimony. Now, Kathy Ladham, who is Kathy Ladham? Kathy Ladham, former Coffee County GOP chair, accused of being a fake elector. Okay, so that's who she is. There's her picture right there. And I'm just going to read the first paragraph too. Okay, Kathy Ladham, the former GOP chair for Coffee County. Coffee County is just another county south of Georgia. The whole metro Atlanta area, it's called the metro Atlanta area. It has like 11, 12, 13 different counties. Now, I don't believe Coffee County is part of the metro area, but it's just another county right there in that big old ball, if you will, Coffee County, and a member of the Georgia Republican Party's executive committee, was indicted along with former President Donald Trump for election interference in Georgia. She's facing 11 charges. And here's her problem. 16 individuals who have come to be known as the fake electors were initially investigated by Fulton County District Attorney, sweet Fani Willis, one of those fake electors with Latham. So that's the nature of her problem, if you will. That's how this all started for her. I don't want to dive too deep into this, but remember, election laws, you would think it's pretty easy to decide if someone broke the law or did not broke the law. But the reality, folks, is these so-called election laws are not clear. They vary state to state. Generally speaking, the states are the boss of how you conduct elections. Now, there are rules and there are federal rules, but for the most part, it's unclear. There's not a lot of case law on this type of stuff. And there are instances where you need to produce another slate of electors. And I'm not a professional on this, but if there is something that's contentious or there's a concern, something about you produce another set of electors, you send them to Congress, and Congress sorts it out. So this is not something that was just pulled out of thin air. This is a real thing. And this was something that attorneys were consulted on. But what Sweet Fanny did, because obviously she's a Democrat, it's a tightly controlled Democratic county there in Fulton County. It's a minority city, urban type area, heavily Democratic, very much so democratically controlled. And unfortunately, that's where the county seat is. And that's the reason why she had the power to bring this bogus, ridiculous so-called RICO action. And she just went ahead and just indicted anybody and everybody she could. Remember, Michael Roman, whose attorney Ashley Merchant started all of this. Thank God for Ashley Merchant. He was not even originally indicted by the grand jury. They recommended no charge. They did not return what's called a true bill against Michael Roman. But of course, that didn't stop Sweet Fanny. Fanny's got her, on the accelerator there, and I'll just run him over, That's exactly what she did. I bet she's regretting that decision, but we'll see. I'm just going to go on a limb here and guess what's going on. So, at any rate, she, as one of the defendants, has a right to file a motion in this case or to bring something to the court's attention, and that's exactly what she did. She is giving what we call a proffer. She's telling the judge, hey, I have some testimony to give, and if you allow me to testify, here is what I'm going to say. So we're going to briefly touch base on this, all right? If you take a look right here, you see it has been filed in Fulton County Superior Court. So we have defendant Kathy Latham's notice of proposed testimony. Defendant Kathy Latham files this notice of proposed testimony and respectfully submits to the court and the parties that in the event that the evidence were reopened regarding various motions to dismiss or to disqualify the district attorney for Fulton County, Fani T. Willis, and or special prosecutor / paramour Nathan Wade from the prosecution of this action, that Miss Latham would offer the testimony of attorney Manny Aurora. Remember, Manny Aurora was one of the attorneys for one of the defendants that actually took a plea deal. I can't remember if it was Kenneth Chesbro was his client, but anyway, it is one of the defendants that took one of those minor plea deals. He represented them. So if the name sounds familiar, it should, because it's something we have heard before. The testimony of attorney Manny Aurora, formerly adjunct professor at Georgia State University of Law and board certified in criminal law. Sounds like an attorney commercial, doesn't it? On Thursday, February 22nd, Mr. Aurora spoke via telephone, and she's talking about this year. I'm assuming this year, 2024. Yeah, I believe it's this year. On Thursday, February 29th, it has to be this year because this year's a leap year. That's how I know that, right? Okay, the brain's working here, folks. It's that provincial working. On Thursday, February 29th, Mr. Aurora spoke via telephone with the undersigned counsel for Miss Latham. Following is a summary of the proposed testimony, which was provided by Mr. Aurora to counsel for Miss Latham. And this is what she would say if the judge allows her to testify or allows this individual to testify. Was provided by Mr. Aurora. If he allows Mr. Aurora to testify, here's what he would say. Between September through October 2023, Mr. Aurora had several conversations with attorney Terrence Bradley. Remember, he's the ex-law partner of Nathan Wade and their law firm, all right? Terrence Bradley regarding the relationship between District Attorney Willis and Nathan Wade. In the course of Mr. Bradley and Mr. Aurora's discussion, Mr. Bradley told Aurora the following. Mr. Wade had definitely begun a romantic relationship. This is good stuff. This is good. Another collaborator here. Mr. Wade had definitely begun a romantic relationship with Miss Willis during the time that Miss Willis was running for district attorney in 2019 through 2020. Remember, we have said repeatedly, the D-Day, if you will, so to speak, is November 1st, 2021. If they did something November 1st, 2021 or after, not as much of a problem. November 1st, 2021 and before, it's a lie, it's perjury, and potentially a fraud on the court. Just that simple. All right. After the election, during Mrs. Willis' transition, she's coming into office. She had Mr. Wade supervise the transition, including hiring and firing of candidates after interview. So he's just basically showing that they have had a relationship, and this particular fact has been reported by several news sources independently. Breitbart has been all over this particular story in addition to everything else we've been talking about. And finally, Mr. Bradley stated that he had personal knowledge of the relationship between Mr. Wade and District Attorney Willis. Ain't that something? Including details regarding the use of Miss Robin Yearty, that witness we just talked about, Miss Yearty's apartment, such as Mr. Wade's having a garage door opener to the property. Again, remember that other story we talked about the other day? There are witnesses that can testify to the fact not only did they have a love nest over at Yearty's property over in East Point, but Mr. Wade even had a garage door opener to the property. Ain't that something, huh? All right. And then, of course, you got the normal goodbye, therefore, in the event that the court reopens the hearing to receive additional evidence as requested by the state and the defendant, former President Trump, Ms. Latham, requests that the defense be permitted to subpoena Mr. Aurora and present Mr. Aurora's testimony relating to the matters set forth in him. Respectfully submitted this 4th day of March 2024 by the criminal law. And then, of course, you got your certificate of service, as we have discussed before. You have to send a copy to all parties, and that's exactly what they did in this particular case. So that is just yet another something, ain't it? How about that? It just keeps on getting good, don't it? What do you think about this? I mean, there's so much evidence. I'm kind of tempted to think the judge is just going to allow common sense to rule. I think the judge is going to say, there's no reason to reopen this hearing and hear more evidence. I've heard everything I need to hear. I mean, there is an abundance of evidence if the judge chooses to see it this way. I don't even think it's just a preponderance of the evidence type thing. If this was a criminal case, I think this would be an easy conviction for the prosecution. If the question was Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, let's just call it an adult relationship, were they having an adult relationship before February 1st, 2021, I think any reasonable judge, any reasonable person on a jury would say, Your Honor, we find sweet Fani guilty. Period. I think it's really just that simple. I don't think we have to speculate on that too much more. Now, let me hit a couple comments here real quick and see what we got right here. I appreciate everybody stopping in and making comments today. I always appreciate comments here. Danny, thanks for showing up and visiting with us today. Yeah, you got a lot of nonsense going on. Cher, Coach, thanks for joining us today. Yeah, they're going after the firefighters. I saw that today. There are a lot of news reports there. They're actually going after them firefighters that were chanting during the speech and interrupting her comment. And, on one hand, I am sensitive to the fact that your freedom of speech does not give you the freedom to interrupt someone else's speech. It does not give you the freedom to stop others from hearing what someone else has to say. I get that. But at the same time, that Letitia James just aggravates the what out of everybody, So I kind of get that. And my understanding was it was not during the entire speech. It was just at the beginning portion. And in my mind, that's a completely different animal than somebody that's actually actively trying to keep you and me from hearing what someone's trying to say as part of their free speech rights. Agree, disagree? Let me know. Margaret in Northwest Ohio, thanks for joining us today. Zach in Southwest PA. Mark, thanks for joining us as well. I recognize everybody. Did Wade get paid for work done before and after she was elected? Did he have a contract then, or was he working for? My understanding is there's no other contract other than the one that he signed on or about November 1st, 2021. That was their first contract. And that's the reason why it's rather salacious that he was part of the transition team and they were supposedly just acquaintances. They had no prior relationship as far as an adult relationship nature prior to then. That's why Fani got so bent out of shape. That's kind of a funny way to put it, ain't it? I'll just let it go with that. The allegation is, and this is what Robin Yeager originally testified to, if my memory is correct, is that when Wade and Willis met at the when they met originally at the there was some kind of attorney. Remember that CE them hours? It was some kind of hours or something they had to, it was their continuing education hours that they were trying to acquire. That's what was going on. And the allegation is that they met there and she ended up jumping in the sack with him. And that's what got her all fired up and flustered because she thought that destroyed her reputation, if you will. So that's kind of what's going on with that. So to answer your question, Mark, is my understanding is no. So that's kind of where that is. Folks, we've been talking for about an hour. So unfortunately, I do have to cut it. I do appreciate everybody joining me. Hopefully, I'll be back with you tomorrow. You guys know I appreciate each and every one of you. I swear I do. Contact me if you need any questions, thoughts, discussion, whatever. My information is in the comments, or it's normally on the screen right there. I'll put a quick banner up there just so it rolls and y'all have the information. You can always reach me at jrdukes@gmail.com. And of course, my contact information is right there. And that's pretty well about it. I plan on being back tomorrow. We're going to pick up where we left off. I got so many documents to go through and a lot of salacious stories that I'm working on, and we will pick it up hopefully next time. I always say, keep that mind free, never give up. And until next time, my friends, I am Jay.